Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm your host, Amanda Lamb. In today's deep dive conversation with WRAL photojournalist Rick Armstrong, we're talking about a place in Raleigh that holds special memories for a lot of people. And now with the new owner, it's ready for new memories to be made there. It's the Rialto Theater on Glenwood Avenue, Raleigh's oldest theater, and an iconic place for many Raleigh natives and transplants like me. Rick, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So first of all, tell us about the Rialto. What was it known for, and why is it so important to Raleigh's history?
Well, my family moved down to North Carolina in 1965, and my earliest memory was going to what it was once called the Colony Theater, but later became the Rialto. And what we wanted to see was Laurel and Hardy films or any other kind of comedy. And if there were Disney films, and I'm trying to remember, I mean, my memory on this may be a little foggy, but I think it was a place where people would go to see The Computer That Wore Tennis Shoes, or, you know, some of those after Walt Disney kind of movies that now you watch and you think, ooh, that Walt would have done better. But in the time, I was entertained and loved it.
Yeah, I mean, it was revolutionary at the time. And what's really interesting is that it wasn't just a movie theater. I mean, other things happened there. I remember the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which was a live show that took place there when I first moved here in the 90s and you know, beyond. What are some of the other things? I know there were some musical acts that took place there, famous musical acts.
Yeah, and I was speaking with Hayes Permar about this, and he just rattled off a string of artists that had performed there. And the neat thing is that the stage, most movie theaters, that big old screen is locked in place, but the one that is at the Rialto can be pushed back and reveal this huge stage. So they had artists. He spoke of Tori Amos, Melissa Etheridge, Jane's Addiction, Fishbone, Bjork in her old band, Arlo Guthrie, J.J. Cale played there, Iggy Pop. So, and he just rattled those off, and I'm sure he could have kept going.
And he is the new owner, and we're going to talk more about him in the second half of the show. But first, I really want to set the scene for people. I actually went on my first date with my now husband back in 1994 to the Rialto. We saw Pulp Fiction. And, you know, it always felt to me like you were stepping back in time, right? Like you could close your eyes and you could imagine people there in the 1940s and the 1950s. And in fact, they had some of those older pictures on the walls. And you could picture how many people over the years had spent time there and just what it meant to so many people. So it closed in August of 2022. The longtime owner, Bill Peebles, decided to sell. Do we know why he did that?
Well, he was around for a long time, and he was managing more than one theater in the area. And they tended to be those kind of theaters, the Rialto, the Colony, and others. And as time went along, I remember the Village Twin theaters at Cameron Village, and then the Cardinal out at North Hills. So there were more and more theaters being built, but the core theaters, the early theaters of Raleigh, included the Ambassador downtown, the what was the Colony became the Rialto, and then the Colony out on Six Forks Road further out. And those seemed to have the most charm, the most local characteristic feeling, you know, that you had if you were going to go with a friend to the movies.
And a lot of independent films as well. But, you know, I would imagine that it's hard to keep up with streaming. It's hard to keep up with what's happening online and people being able to get movies in their homes. So, you know, obviously it was a business decision to sell, and a lot of people were worried that it wouldn't reopen, but it is reopening this summer. And so we're going to talk about that. After the break, we'll be back with more from WRAL's Rick Armstrong about what's next for the Rialto Theater in Raleigh. Welcome back to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm talking with WRAL's Rick Armstrong about the iconic Rialto Theater, which is set to reopen this summer. So you had the pleasure of interviewing the new owner, or he's part of a group of owners. He doesn't like to call himself an owner. Hayes Permar, who's a former sportscaster. And apparently, according to interviews he's done, he worked on this for quite a while. This was important to him. what is he like, and what did he tell you about why he wanted to do this?
Well, he looked like the kind of guy who, just having grown up in that place, being in 5 Points and driving by it, walking by it, maybe when he was younger, riding his bike by it and seeing it closed for periods of time, he wanted to save it. He didn't want it to be changed into something else, like many of those venues did. There was one, I can't even remember the name of it, on Hillsborough Street that was real popular among NC State students, and that got totally switched over to something else. He wanted to save the Rialto Theater and make it special again, because he knows that there are a lot of artists out there. If it's just going to be movies, anybody can go out and see the movies, but to see a regular showing of the Rocky Horror Picture Show or other kind of classics like Pulp Fiction, that's the place to go. And the people who go there and want to see that too, those are the kind of people you want to sit next to. These are the true fans. And
I love what he said when he was talking about, owning it and saying, hey, I'm not really an owner. I'm just the guy that's popping the popcorn. And he said, this belongs to Raleigh. He talked about things like Char Grill and Krispy Kreme and Dick's Park, things that are just quintessential Raleigh, part of our history, part of our fabric. And, a lot of people, like you said, grew up going there. And he said he grew up going there too. He said starting at about age 11, he would go there with his family. And he just remembered it being such an exciting thing to do. And now he wants to recreate that. And some of the other things he talked about are not just having theater, not just having, a movie theater, but having live comedy, live music, live podcasts. So it sounds like he's got a real vision for the future here. Is that what you got from the interview?
Yeah, I think he realizes that you've got to do more than show films. You've got to bring in something that's going to happen once. You're not often going to get these famous music acts to come to the theater, and when you do, people come, and it's just a popular way of you want the feel of a theater, but sometimes you want real live performances and people that you've seen performing around the country who are in your hometown, and if that venue is available, they're going to come here, especially if people know them and want more of that in their hometown.
And I don't think a lot of people realize there's 400 seats. So it's a pretty big venue. I'm not sure if they'll keep that number, but that's historically what it's had. So that's a pretty big venue. Another thing that comes to mind is the Cary Theater on Chatham Street, downtown Cary. They have done the same thing. They show film, they have comedy, they have live music. So really branching out and trying to give the community other things other than movies.
Absolutely. And, just from my history living near that area, I grew up on Beach Ridge Road, and I went to fourth grade in Myrtle Underwood, which was right next door. And we would walk past, going back homeward, we'd walk past the Colony Theater then, the Rialto now, and see what they had up on the billboard, what was going to show. And, if it was at that age, if it was a Disney movie, it was something Mom and Dad let me go see, if it was Laurel and Hardy. But it wasn't until later, as I understand, that these live acts came in and really made big events out of that.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm a transplant to Raleigh, but came here in '94. But it's always had a special place in my heart because of that first date. But in addition to that, my husband lived in 5 Points, and so we went there all the time, and it just became a special place for me, even though I'm not from Raleigh. What is it like as a Raleigh native? You're seeing a lot of changes, right? I mean, we're seeing a lot of historical properties go away. And that's, that's, some people call it progress. Some people call it gentrification, development, economic progress. But it is sad when you're a local to see things that you grew up with go away. So what is it like on the flip side when somebody says, hey, raise my hand, I'm going to save this place?
Yeah. And, 5 Points is a special place. It kind of bucks the trend of everything getting torn down and replaced. The old laundromat there, and I can't remember the cleaning place, it's a historic glass square box figure that you can see the clothing roll by on hangers. That's still there. The Johnson's Pharmacy, where you could get sundaes in the back in a soda fountain atmosphere, There were, stores and little places where you can grab pop. And that was all part of the experience, because from there, the walk over to the movie theater wasn't that far. So all of that stuff is still there. The Piggly Wiggly, I'm not sure if the Piggly Wiggly is still there, but if it is, it's one of the last that are surviving.
There's actually a restaurant there, but the Piggly Wiggly was there when I moved here, and they changed it into a restaurant. But they still have a lot of the Piggly Wiggly stuff, signs, and things to remind you of what was there. But I agree with you. I think 5 Points has done a good job of maintaining a lot of the character of Raleigh, and I think this is really exciting to see what happens next with the Rialto.
Absolutely.
Rick, thank you so much for sharing your reporting and also sharing your personal story. And again, we will continue to watch this and look forward to the news of them opening and what's going to happen at the Rialto. And thank you for listening to the WRAL Daily Download and making us part of your morning routine. If you like what you're hearing, please rate us on Apple Podcasts or on whatever podcast app you use. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. It's a daily email waiting in your inbox every morning with Triangle News events and headlines to get you ready for the day. Sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.